our keynote speaker, Senator Ted Cruz.
God bless Texas. Eric, thank you so very much. It is great to be with you. It is great to welcome everyone here to celebrate the tremendous work that Texas Values does. I'm going to start by committing a radical act. I'm going to speak the truth. America is great. Our founding fathers were extraordinary patriots. George Washington is an American hero. Thomas Jefferson is an American hero. Abraham Lincoln is an American hero. Police officers keep us safe. Israel is our friend. The Wuhan virus came from Wuhan, China. Unborn babies are babies. And there is a difference between boys and girls. Now, I want you to pause and reflect that even 5 years ago, every single one of those statements would have been regarded as blazingly obvious, incontrovertible truth. And today we're living in a time and era where uttering even one of those can get you silenced, can get you shadow banned, can get you fired, can get you canceled. But you know what? Nobody in this room is afraid. That's why I'm proud to be here tonight. Because I'm in the presence of warriors. I've got 3 principles, 3 key points that I want to raise tonight. Number 1, Texas values matter. Truth matters. Look, you look at the 3 things: faith, family, freedom. Faith. There is a reason the very first clause of the First Amendment of the Bill of Rights protects our religious liberty. Because every other right flows downstream from that. We are a nation founded by men and women fleeing religious oppression, coming here to seek out a land where you and I could seek out and worship the Lord God Almighty with all of our hearts, minds, and souls. And government has got no business trying to get in the way of that. Family. Family is the fundamental building block of our nation, of our state, of our communities. The responsibility of, dare I say it, a mother and a father. By the way, news broke this week. The Air Force Academy is instructing cadets, do not use the words mom or dad. Call them caregivers instead. And freedom. Look, the beauty of freedom is it protects your right to be right and your right to be wrong. your heart's content and you can say what you believe most. That freedom, free speech, religious liberty, the Second Amendment, the fundamental right to raise your kids, to teach your kids, to protect your family. Those values matter, and if you ever wondered how much Texas values matter, look back over the last 2 years. Look back over the idiocy of the shutdowns we saw all across this country during COVID. Look, often character is revealed in crisis. We saw petty tyrant politicians shutting down small businesses, shutting down restaurants, gyms, and bars and stores, shutting down churches, shutting down schools. I'm convinced academics will look back decades from now at this period of history and wonder what in the heck was going on. What collective psychosis overtook the country? Tens of millions of children across the United States had their schools shut down, not just for weeks, not just for months, but over a year. We just got the NAEP numbers, the National Association Educational Assessment Program, the gold standard of testing kids. The fourth grade number just came back a little over a week ago. Reading scores nationwide have plummeted, and math scores nationwide have plummeted. The single biggest drop for American school kids since that test has ever been administered. In 1 year. It's almost like shutting down schools across the country is a bad idea. And by the way, in addition to that, the racial gap, the gap between black students and white students, and between Hispanic students and white students, the racial gap is bigger than it's ever been, and it increased more last year than it ever has in recorded history. Nice job, Democrats. And in the course of all of that, Texas was a beacon for freedom. Let me say, in this pandemic, I've said many times, and many people across the country have said this, thank God for Texas and thank God for Florida. If it were not for two red states that said, we ain't shutting down, these idiots would still have things packed. The state of Texas is a shining example to the country. That's point number one. Texas values matter. Here's point number two. Those values are under assault like never before. Listen, I've been in the United States Senate now for 10 years. That's really hard to believe. There are a lot of people in this room who were with me when we were running. Tim, you remember when I started running for Senate, I was at 2%. The original 2%ers. Valerie, look, there are a lot of us in this room, or you had to be certifiably nuts to be backing this race. By the way, I love people who are certifiably nuts. But it's been now 10 years. I have never in my life seen Washington, D.C. as crazy as it is right now. Deranged. It's one thing for them to be liberal. It's one thing for them to be silly. They are out of their friggin' minds. Look, the combination of Biden and Harris and Pelosi and Schumer, they've gotten everything wrong. That's actually hard to do. You think about it. If they rolled the dice, if they threw a dart at a board, by accident they'd get something right. Every single thing they touch, they destroy. You look at what's happening nationally. Inflation is skyrocketing. Price of everything is going up. Price of food, price of electricity, Heck, it's so bad, Antifa can't afford bricks. It's so bad, Eric Swalwell can't afford Chinese dinners. It is so bad, AOC can't afford fake handcuffs. You've got crime skyrocketing across this country, murder rates going up, carjacking rates going up, assault going up, burglary going up. You've got chaos at our southern border. 4.4 million people have crossed illegally under Joe Biden. The worst illegal immigration in 62 years. We have never seen it remotely this bad. And as bad as the domestic policy and economic policy is, foreign policy is even worse. From our disastrous withdrawal and surrender to the Taliban in Afghanistan, leaving Americans behind, resulting in 13 servicemen and women being murdered by terrorists. When that happened, every enemy of this earth, every enemy of this country, looked to the Oval Office and they took the measure of the man in the Oval Office. And tragically, they concluded that the president was weak and feckless and ineffective. And every single region on earth has gotten more dangerous. Every enemy of America is stronger. Now, some of y'all may be thinking, you know, Ted, at the outset, you told us you were going to encourage us. You really stink at this. But I've got a third point. Revival is coming. Listen, I believe that. I believe that with all of my heart. As I travel around Texas, as I travel around the country, people's eyes are opening up. You know, historically, politics has always been like a pendulum in this country. One party gets in power, they go too far one direction, the American people say, hold on a second, they pull it on back. Well, every time I see these knuckleheads embracing some dumbass idea in Washington. Look, part of it grieves for the damage it's doing to the country, but part of me quietly celebrates because it's accelerating the process of this country coming back. You know, 5 years ago, in the Senate, there was one open and avowed socialist in the Senate. Bernie Sanders, he was the only one. Crazy Uncle Bernie, white hair sticking straight up. By the way, would it kill the guy to use a comb? I mean, he's a socialist, he can just take one from someone. But he was the only one, and all the other Democrats, they would say, no, we're not socialists. No, we're something else, but we're not that. Today, Bernie Sanders is the chairman of the Senate Budget Committee, and the number one priority of the Democrats is passing Bernie Sanders' socialist budget. It has gotten so extreme. All right, let's think back to COVID. Remember the rules during COVID. Remember the rules of a restaurant. Okay. You walk into a restaurant. You must wear a mask. Why? Because of science. Then you get to your table and sit down and take your mask off. And it's perfectly safe and harmless and beneficial. Why? Because of science. And actually, I've got a theory. The COVID virus reacts to altitude. So at 6 feet, it is utterly deadly. Watch out. At 3 feet, it is completely harmless and stimulates hair follicle growth. By the way, that's why Fauci's safe. He's only 5 feet tall. But you know, people looked at this and they realized this is nonsense. This is arbitrary. Listen, a number of weeks back we had a hearing, the Senate Judiciary Committee, with a number of witnesses, including this one law professor from Berkeley. A law professor whom I call Professor Crazy Eyes. And repeatedly, she made reference to people with the capacity for pregnancy. Now, I'll confess, I had already asked my questions. I was really disappointed that I was already done. But the next senator at the dais was my friend, Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri. He was more than up to the task. And Josh leaned forward. He said, Professor, I've noticed 3 times you've used the phrase, people with the capacity for pregnancy. Do you mean women? And Crazy Eyes looked back at me and said, no! And she said, your question is transphobic and an invitation to violence. Now, I'll confess, Josh showed a lot more restraint than I would have. I think I would have taken her head off right there. But Josh just very calmly raised an eyebrow and said, I'm inviting people to violence by observing that women can get pregnant. Look, these people are out of their minds. Senate Judiciary Committee, another one of my Democrat colleagues referred to birthing people. The Senate floor, I pulled him aside, I said, is your base really that friggin' insane that you cannot say moms? He just looked at me and said, yeah. But the good news is, there's a vast reservoir of common sense. People see that and they know it's nutty. Look, you look at the lunatics that are trying to destroy girls' sports. You look at Leah Thomas. I'm sorry, Leah Thomas is a dude. Leah Thomas has a chest and arms and looks like Michael Phelps. And it's ridiculous. I don't know, Dave Chappelle has an old routine I tweeted out just last week where he said, okay, so there's not a difference between men and women. I guess that means we won't have women's sports anymore, so I guess that means LeBron James can play in the WNBA. Be very interesting watching him score 860 points in a game. Like, people get this. People understand. When lunatics go after Coach Kennedy for daring to drop to one knee and pray to the Lord God Almighty, people get this is bizarre and stupid. And so I want to encourage you. Listen, Texas Values every day is fighting at the Texas legislature to keep Texas true to our values. Jonathan has been a dear friend for 2 decades. When I was Solicitor General of Texas, I worked hand in hand with Jonathan and with Kelly Shackelford, defending religious liberty, defending the Texas 10 Commandments Monument, defending the Pledge of Allegiance, defending life, defending religious liberty, winning on national levels. Well, I thank you for the work Texas Values does, keeping Texas true to our values. Because all it takes is a moment relaxing. A moment saying, we got this. A moment saying, we're fine. A moment saying, it can't happen here. And we wake up and find that the state we we love and the values we love have been destroyed. You know, one of my favorite lines from a movie is the movie The Usual Suspects, where they say the greatest trick the devil ever played was to convince the world he didn't exist. Well, let me tell you, the devil exists. And he has a bullseye on the state of Texas. Because if he can destroy Texas, he'll destroy America. You know, it's interesting as an elected official, you go around and do grassroots gathering. With some regularity, reporters love this, but I get questions. Should Texas secede from the Union? And I got to admit, I understand the sentiment behind that question. I've thought more than once. We'll take the Army, we'll take NASA, we'll take the oil, we'll build a wall on the Red River, and we'll be good. I get that sentiment. But the answer I give without hesitation or exception is no, I don't support that. Because without Texas, America would be lost. And we have a responsibility. America is worth fighting for. I'm not willing to give America to the Marxists who would tear her down, who would tear down the liberties that built this nation, who would tear down the rights we have for America, who would tear down that shining city on a hill. That's a fight worth fighting. And I would encourage you, listen, be happy warriors. You know, the left is so angry. They're shrill, they're filled with hate. How many radical leftists does it take to screw in a light bulb? That's not funny! Like they're convulsing with humorless rage. By the way, I said that once in a group. The guy in the back called out, how many does it take? And I said, actually, nobody knows. Because that would require work. But be happy, joyful warriors. Defend Texas values. And I'll tell you what we've got to do. We've got to win people's hearts and minds. So the folks who've worked on my team have only heard me say this about 100,000 times. I say this every day. We've got to connect with people and persuade them why Texas values matter. Why freedom matters. 2.5 years ago, I launched a podcast. The podcast is called Verdict with Ted Cruz. We started it on the first day of the first impeachment trial against Donald Trump. Spent the entire day of the trial, wrapped up about midnight, jumped in a truck, headed to the studio, recorded it immediately that night, put it out that night. We did it every night, immediately after the trial. We went from never existed to very shortly thereafter becoming the #1 ranked podcast in the world. We do it every week. We've had over 40 million downloads. Every week we get more viewers than CNN's morning shows. And we do it to go around the mainstream media. To go around the corrupt corporate media. So I want to ask everyone here, pull out your phone. Pull out your phone and text the word verdict to 24005. Again, that's verdict to 24005. And you should get back a link to subscribe you to Verdict. Now, to everyone under 40, subscribe yourself to the podcast. Everyone over 40, find your kids or grandkids and get them to subscribe to the podcast. But we need to be connecting with, look, not just the choir, not just the 240 2.6 million people watching Fox News every night. But we need to be connecting with young people. We need to be connecting with Hispanics and African Americans. We need to be connecting with suburban moms who freedom impacts, whose liberties are at risk, whose family is at risk, and we're not connecting with them now effectively. We need to do a much better job. As evangelists for Jesus, yes. But also in the public sphere as evangelists for liberty. As evangelists for our values. And Texas Values does a phenomenal job doing that. So I'm here tonight more than anything to say thank you. Thank you for your faithfulness. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for being joyful warriors. You are quite literally serving at a time where together we are fighting to save the greatest country in the history of the world. That's a fight worth fighting. I'm going to close with a story of my favorite former senator from Texas, Phil Graham. Phil Graham in the early 1980s, he was a House member and he was a Democrat, a conservative Democrat, back when there used to be such a thing as a conservative Democrat. And Phil Graham was the author in the House of Ronald Reagan's tax cuts. And Phil was trying to convince other conservative Democrats in Texas to support Reagan's tax cuts. So he went to them. There were a bunch of them at the time. And he was making the case this is the right thing to do for Texas, it's the right thing to do for the country. And he drew an analogy. He said, remember when William Barrett Travis drew a line in the sand at the Alamo? This is that moment where you make your choice. And one of those Democrats said, but Phil, everyone who stepped across that line, they died. And Phil, without missing a beat, he said, yes. Yes, they did. And you know what? Everyone who didn't step across that line, they died too. And nobody remembers their names. The men and women in this room, we've stepped across the line. We've said we will not give up our faith. We will not give up our freedom. We will not give up our family. We will not give up Texas. That is a fight worth fighting.